Mr. Squidward, welcome to the night shift.
Well, at long last, Isaiah Leung's time and reign hosting the night shift has come to a conclusion after 100 and who knows how many days, folks. But after that said time frame, we welcome you folks back inside of the MI6 Sports Network's late night sports talk show. That, of course, everybody, is the night shift on this Saturday night, May 29th, 2021. Alongside the now permanent co-host of the night shift after the hiatus break, Isaiah Leung from the home studios up in Fremont, California. Yours truly, Callan McClurg, back with you here as the seasonal hiatus has in fact come and gone from the home studios here in San Diego. Isaiah, thank you for holding down the fort on this program when you were able to host it, but sadly, man, things must go back to the way they were before the hiatus. We're good to see you, though, my man. How we doing tonight?
Callan, how about another hiatus, man? What do you say?
No.
But I'm doing good, man. Great to have you back on the night shift. We haven't done a night shift. I feel like it feels like 3 to 4 years since the last time we've done a night shift. But it's great to be back. Great to be back doing the night shift here on the MI6 Sports Network. You know, I'm really happy today because I know my A's lost, but first of all, I woke up this morning, had myself a nice cup of coffee and a nice toasted butter croissant. Great legendary combo right there. And then, you know, had a great time at work. All the people at the Coliseum were super, super nice. And then after the A's lost, you know, I was kind of a bit disappointed, went home, checked the Astros-Padres game and saw that the Padres were down like 6-1 or something like that. And then the Padres somehow, some way, miraculously come back. And next thing I know, I check on my phone. It's a tie ball game, 6-6. It was 8-8. And then Will Myers, after Austin Adams gives up the run on a passed ball, he gives it up, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Austin Adams, you had one strike. You just needed one more strike to get out of that inning and end that ball game, and my A's would have kept our 2.5 game lead on the Houston Astros in the AL West. But then Will freaking Myers, who will be in Oakland A in about 3 years, that man, that brother, Will Myers launches a 3-run homer, and the Padres win, and the A's keep our 2.5 game lead on the Houston Astros in the AL West. No harm done today by losing today to the Los Angeles Angels. So, Callan, I got to thank your Padres. I got to thank Will Myers for that blast. Thank you for helping the A's keep our lead in the American League West. That's why today I'm rocking the Slam Diego shirt to pay tribute to the San Diego Padres. Who helped my A's keep our lead. So thank you, Padres. Thank you.
After that extremely long opening rant by Mr. Leung, I will remind you folks, so I've been away since January, that the Night Shift is the MI6 Sports Network's late night sports talk show where Isaiah and I stay up late and recap all the big games, the big plays, big scores, and of course the other big news of the day throughout the course of this program every Saturday and Sunday. Of course, tomorrow we will be back on air with the Night Shift, as in fact that the Marvel Dudes podcast, myself and John Alcorn, is taking tomorrow off, as we talked about, though. But John is, in fact, moving to a new residence. He'll be off tomorrow and get you ready for the Loki series next Sunday at 9:30 p.m. But, of course, folks, fire away in that live chat box. Questions, comments, or concerns. We'll, of course, do our best to get to those as, in fact, our program progresses throughout the course of the evening. First, Mr. James Gonzalez already writing in saying hello. Taylor also writing in saying go Halos as well, with him being from Orange County. Our good man, Adam Barber from the Coast to Coast Network, is saying, what's up, my dudes? A nice vacation sounds good. Me in August there, Mr. Barber. So while I'm gone, it'll be your job to keep the guy in square two in check while I'm away again. And also, Taylor says, go Padres as well. The other good guy, Brandon Herrera, also from Coast to Coast, saying what's up to Mr. Leung, and now James is also writing in. So Isaiah is now a Padre fan and giving up on his Phillies. Ha, ha, ha. Also, Brandon says, I'm not sure if Isaiah knows what teams to root for. Well, that's essentially, I've mocked him for that with the first game we'll talk about in just a moment here, Mr. Herrera. And also, James says, Isaiah, for the love of God, please don't curse the Padres. Ha, ha, ha. Also, shout out to my good guy, David Frecker, saying, hey, let's FLG. And also, good evening, Callan. And also, James is saying, go Halos again. And also, David is saying, what is good? All is good, Mr. Frecker, in the neighborhood today. And also, Brandon is asking, Isaiah, how about the fact that Josh Donaldson of the Twins today scored the 2 millionth run in Major League Baseball history? Before we actually get into the games, Isaiah, that's a pretty awesome stat line right there, that this game's been going on since the 1870s, and today we get the 2 millionth run scored in Major League Baseball history. Great tidbit today by all the research folks who cover baseball.
Unbelievable, man. I didn't even know that until just now. So, Brandon, thank you so much for, putting that in there and keeping us updated and, telling us that. But yeah, man, 2 millionth run in Major League Baseball history. That's a tremendous feat.
Brandon, I would say that perhaps that the victory or that the run and the win by the Twins today probably, hopefully, eases the pain of the Wild losing in Game 7 to Vegas last night. We'll see how things go. With that, though, Isaiah, to the NBA postseason, recapping plenty of action from earlier on this Saturday. As mentioned, I was actually away today at a Major League Soccer match up in Los Angeles earlier today, so wasn't able to watch a lot of the events today. However, though, Isaiah, skimming box scores and, of course, seeing highlights. But we'll first start, though, down in South Beach, Miami, Florida. The Milwaukee Bucks get their playoff retribution and sweep, and sweep the defending Eastern Conference champion Miami Heat right out of their home barn, 120-103. The Bucks over the Heat today from American Airlines Arena in Miami Beach, Florida. Isaiah, I said this, I think, earlier this week, though, that this postseason to me, for some ball clubs, appears to be all about the revenge tour. So far with the Bucks and also the Mavericks, but of course the Bucks finish off the job today. And really, it just seemed to me, though, Isaiah, that Miami in this whole series had absolutely no chance of beating the Bucks. Because I think that even though that Milwaukee probably didn't add a lot of pieces to their roster, though, Miami, though, I think just had some bad luck in this series. They really could never find their rhythm in this series, but Milwaukee just took it right to them. Yeah, Game 1 boiled down, though, to the overtime throw. But it looked like, though, Isaiah, that maybe this happens a lot, though, man, that one game, if you drop one game in that kind of fashion like Miami did, though, with Middleton hitting that game-winning basket, you are bound to probably lose your confidence. Or, I was actually talking with my dad tonight. We were watching the second-round matchup between the Boston Bruins and the New York Islanders, and my dad said that when David Pastrnak scored his third goal of the game for his hat trick, that basically broke the Islanders' morale and broke their confidence. I kind of feel like, though, Isaiah, that today, or at least that Game 1, with Miami losing at the final buzzer, basically in overtime, after they had led for a majority of that game game kind of crushed their soul a little bit, and that they never were able to recover. Of course, they got plastered in Game 2, and then they lose Game 3, then, of course, get beat today in Game 4. But, Isaiah, overall, your thoughts, though, more so about how, in fact, that you saw Milwaukee probably take it to Miami this round as opposed to maybe what happened in the bubble last season. Because it looks like, man, it's a tale of two different series dating back to the bubble and now into 2021. What do you got?
I'm very upset at the Miami Heat. I really am.
Oh, dear. I'm sorry to hear that.
I'm pissed off at the Miami Heat because of two reasons. Number one, they made me look like an absolute fool by me picking the Miami Heat, as you can see in this bracket that I prepared before the playoffs started. I picked, right here. I picked the Miami Heat to beat the Milwaukee Bucks in
Isaiah loses again. Isaiah loses again. 10 games of losing. Isaiah loses again. Skull, 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 skull. Skull, 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 skull. Still keep on losing. Isaiah loses again. Isaiah loses again. Isaiah loses again. 10 games of losing, Isaiah loses again. He's worse than Stephen Wayne. He's worse than Stephen Wayne. Skills keep on losing. Skol, 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 skol.
The Miami Heat, I picked them like you saw right here to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, which means now this bracket that I had prepared and also entered into the $1 billion challenge of getting a perfect bracket. This bracket is now gone. Goodbye. It is now done. And my chances of getting the $1 billion prize is now over with as well. But second thing I wanted to say, the Miami Heat, I also need to thank you because I was at work today and I apparently had made a bet with one of my buddies, security guard buddies, and he reminded me of this literally 2 weeks after the bet was made, after I was so confident and so cocky that the Heat would win the series. He reminded me today, he was like, hey, buddy, your Heat prediction is not looking so good. You know, remember what you said you were going to do if the Miami Heat somehow, someway lost the series? You were going to get a spray-on tan on yourself if the Heat lost. And the Heat didn't just lose. They got swept. They didn't even show up. Like, I picked them to win in 7, and they didn't even win a single game. That's why I am really upset right now at the Miami Heat. It's a disgrace what happened out there on the basketball court. I don't even know who this Miami Heat team is. I think this Miami Heat team got kidnapped by a bunch of folks, and they got replaced with a bunch of like fake basketball players out there, fake robots out there impersonating Tyler Hero, impersonating Duncan Robinson, impersonating Jimmy Butler, because these aren't the Miami Heat that we saw last season in the bubble and that went to the NBA Finals. The Miami Heat, they are the biggest disappointment of this NBA postseason. You know, many people had them projected, a lot of people had them maybe going to the finals, but definitely going to the Eastern Conference Finals. And for you to get swept like that, it's just embarrassing. It's disgraceful. And, you know, about the Heat players, Jimmy Butler, where were you in this entire series? Where were you? You got outscored in this entire series by some dude named Brian Forbes. Brian Forbes outscored you in this entire series. 60 points he had in this entire series. Jimmy Butler had 58 points this entire series. How on earth do you get outscored by Brian Forbes? You're supposed to be the star of this team. You're supposed to be the engine that makes the Miami Heat go. And you don't even show up in this series. And you got outscored by a guy who recently, like back in November, only signed a 2-year, like $20 million contract with the Milwaukee Bucks, and everybody just took a look at that signing and was like, okay, cool story, Woj. How do you get outscored by that guy, Jimmy Butler? Absolute disgraceful. He didn't show up. Duncan Robinson, you know, he didn't show up. Tyler Hero, I don't know what happened to him. You know, everybody was calling him Devin, like the next Devin Booker after the bubble.
You're the only one saying that.
Tyler Hero looked worse than me playing basketball in this series. He kept bricking every single three coming his way. You know, Bam Adebayo, he had a quiet series. Goran Dragic, the guy was MIA. Someone needs to put out a warrant for him. He was nowhere to be found. Iguodala, where was his defensive impact this entire series? I didn't see it. Giannis just bulldozed his way by Andre Iguodala. And you know, it's just really disappointing. You know, the Miami Heat, I had such high expectations for them, especially after coming off their bubble performance. They just didn't show up. It seemed like, you know, they were like the Charlotte Hornets and were ready to go on their vacation to the Bahamas. So I hope you enjoy all your shrimp cocktails, all your margaritas, and get a nice tan while you're at it in the Bahamas, because you clearly did not want to play basketball, and instead you wanted to go on your vacation. So I hope you enjoy your vacation and say hi to the Charlotte Hornets for me down there in the Bahamas. But about the Milwaukee Bucks, Callan, this team, they're dangerous. They are a juggernaut, and, you know, I think Giannis heard all the noise that was coming after He flamed out in the second round last season, and he was on a mission to prove all those people wrong. And this Milwaukee Bucks team, they are playing with an edge. They are playing with a chip on their shoulder. Middleton looks like a completely different player than the guy in last season's bubble. Brian Forbes, who I was talking about earlier, comparing him and Jimmy Butler, he looks like a completely different player than the guy on the Spurs. Giannis is playing outstanding basketball. Drew Holiday's making a great impact. This Milwaukee Bucks team, I think, has the potential to give the Brooklyn Nets a run for their money.
Oh dear, Isaiah. So sorry to hear that another one of your billion teams in the wide world of sports lost. But like I said, though, Isaiah, it's all about playoff retribution. And I think that, obviously, with a team like Milwaukee, who, again, like Trevor Williams said, though, earlier in the week, though, that last year was probably Milwaukee's best chance to get to the finals. And yet, though, they flamed out to this very same Miami Heat team who got hot, though, at the right time, much like what we talk about a lot in sports about peaking at the right time, getting hot at the right time. Miami got hot at the right time, but ultimately, though, ran into that buzzsaw that was the LA Lakers. Now I kind of think, though, Isaiah, that with Miami out, though, for one thing, obviously new Eastern Conference champion this season, but also, though, that this may, I think, perhaps open Pat Riley's eyes just a wee bit about the roster procurement right now and how their roster in Miami is set up right now. I mean, I think that they definitely, though, have a couple of interesting or intriguing, players, though, with Adebayo, with Bam, Robinson, and Hero. But Isaiah, I kind of feel like, though, that Jimmy Butler, I think he may have resurrected his career, though, but I think he probably needs like one more guy to kind of help, I think, be that veteran leader for his team. I think Dragic can be, though, but his health, I think, has kind of deteriorated over the past several years, though. I think he's been great, though, down there. And also, I don't want to put any of this, though, on Eric Spoelstra. I kind of think this is a little bit of a Boston situation with Miami where the roster I'm not fully on board with. I think Spoelstra, though, has done a phenomenal job, though. I think that Pat Riley has to maybe retool a wee bit, not a whole lot, but retool with maybe another veteran star or another veteran player to kind of play alongside Butler to kind of, I think, even out, to kind of, I think, help these guys out, though. But I think that Adebayo's future is bright. Hero and Robinson have excellent futures, though, but I still want to see like maybe one more big puzzle piece go there to probably help Butler out with with that young core of talent, though. Now with Milwaukee, though, okay, you got over round one, though. But of course, now it's a matter, though, of perhaps this collision course between Brooklyn and Milwaukee with home court belonging to the Nets right now. And I think that right now, though, I still favor Brooklyn. But if Milwaukee can play how they played this, if they can play with the same intensity and the same type of game plan that they had against Miami in the second round, though, they could probably give Brooklyn a lot of fits. They may not be able to win the whole series out. They may take them to 5 or go to 6, maybe go to 7. But I think, though, that Milwaukee has got to stick to their guns, though. Don't change anything in the offensive formation. Keep the same defensive sets. Don't change any of your game plan. It's worked so far. Now, yes, can Brooklyn probably exploit those, offensive holes or defensive schemes? Easily. But I think that right now, you go guns a-blazing and you go hard in game one and see how you can go. And if you can somehow steal at least one game in Brooklyn, I think you're sitting pretty. If you leave there, I think, with a split, I know we don't give out awards for moral victories. I think if you're able to go into Brooklyn, pretty much at full capacity in Brooklyn, and beat the Nets, though, in a probably one of the harder buildings to win in right now in the NBA season this year, and probably what's going to be for a while, that I think can add a bit of confidence, to the psyche. And I think if you get out of there either even Steven, or if you're up 2-0, I think you're sitting extremely pretty if that happens. But I think, though, that for the Bucks, though, again, great to see them at least get that playoff retribution for last season, and above all else, sweep the Miami Heat after winning game 4 today at American Airlines Arena. Again, Bucks 120, Heat 103. It's a sweep for the Bucks. We'll move on to play either Boston or Brooklyn in round 2 of the NBA postseason. Plenty of thoughts, Isaiah. First, our good man, Casey King, who says, good evening, Jensen. Also, James Gonzalez is writing and saying, I thought that Miami would have at least gotten a game in the series, though, but can we just skip forward to next week, though, for Brooklyn versus Milwaukee? I'm pretty stoked. It's going to be great, and I think that I really hope that this is the one that goes 7 games. I really want to see how far this series goes with both of these, great teams coming up. And Brandon Herrera is back saying, "Oh, the Heat made you look like a fool, Leung." And of course, it's a shaking head. Brandon's also asking, was that a Viking skull? Yes, it was. It was the skull song, but we made it, though, to the MI6 national anthem, which is Isaiah Loses Again. Also, Mr. King saying, "Callan, welcome back." Of course, Casey, thanks for chiming in. And also, Casey writes in, "Yes, I sure didn't think that Miami would be swept by the Bucks. I picked Milwaukee, but I thought it would go 7. Props to Milwaukee as they earned it." I think, though, Isaiah, goes back to my point, though, about the Bucks getting playoff retribution.
Yeah, I think it's that, and also the Miami Heat, they were just ice cold from 3 this entire series. If you watch, besides game 1, but game 2, game 3, and then game 4, which I just don't think Miami showed up, because I think after game 3, after they had lost, they got destroyed in game 3. After they got destroyed in game 3, I just thought that the Heat just checked out. I really did. And I think that, you got to give credit to the Bucks. They played really good defense, especially on Duncan Robinson, especially on Tyler Hero, and also Dragic as well. And that really was the difference between this year's series and last year's series. I thought the Milwaukee Bucks last year did a really poor job of defending the perimeter, letting guys like Hero, letting guys like Duncan Robinson, and then Jimmy Butler get going from the perimeter. And then when they closed the lane in the perimeter, it was too late, because Miami just kept driving into the lanes and getting easy layups. I think the Heat, or the Bucks, switched their defense. They locked down the perimeter and then made the middle of the paint just really hard to go into for the Miami Heat. And I think that was the difference between last season and this season for the Milwaukee Bucks.
I also think it goes back to the point I brought up, though, earlier in the show, though, Isaiah, about how, in fact, that game 1 OT loss, where, again, this game was back and forth. Miami had leads that they couldn't hold. The Bucks had leads that they couldn't hold, and it came down to Middleton making that basket. And again, that's a game winner with 0.2 to go in the game. I mean, Derek Fisher's not on speed dial to throw a shot up and get it in with 0.2 to go. And I think that game right there is kind of where I think, again, the morale of the ball club basically went and died at Pfizer Forum in game 1. James agrees with Isaiah's thoughts, though, saying that Heat players did not show up, basically. Again, I think that goes back, though, more so to my point, though, James, about game 1, where after that, that heartbreaking loss where, again, you lose at the buzzer, it's like, this game, they basically went that route. Casey also says the Heat went and became a bunch of Higgins, especially today. Remember, Isaiah, been gone for 160 days, but remember, Huggies, not Higgins. And also James says, quote unquote, the next Devin Booker, ha, ha, ha.
That wasn't even what I was saying about Tyler Hero. I said something even worse. I said he could be the next Klay Thompson, which was even worse than saying the next Devin Booker. But yes, I heard a lot of people from the media to newspapers to people on social media saying he could be the next Devin Booker. And I think, they bought into Tyler Hero's stock a little bit too early. I think what happened, you saw from last season.
Then again, you buy stock in quarterbacks and teams after one game played or after one half is played. We'll move on to the next one. And also, Brandon is saying, does Isaiah always talk this much? Brandon, he does. I'll keep a stopwatch next show to see how long his rants goes at this rate. Also, James says, honestly, I love what Giannis said after the game today. We didn't play with our food today. Story of the series, quite honestly. Also, James says, the Kawhi to Miami rumors are beginning to heat up. I think to Isaiah's point, though, on WST earlier in the week. And also, Ishmael is saying, welcome back to Mr. McClurg. Ishmael, I have seen you plenty of times, though, writing in, but of course not been able to say hello to you in person. So thanks for saying what's up, my good man. Also, James is saying, Bucks can't miss as many threes as they did today if they want to beat the Brooklyn Nets. Where I think, though, Isaiah, that may be the one big category, though, that series boils down to, though, is who makes their most three-pointers.
Exactly. I think James nailed that on the head. The Bucks, they can shoot the three ball, but they're not really good at it. And
they're not consistent.
Yeah, they're inconsistent. And the Brooklyn Nets are a team with Joe Harris, with Kevin Durant, James Harden, all those guys. They shoot the three ball extremely well. So that's what this next series is going to definitely come down to. It's going to come down to who can shoot the three ball the best. If Brooklyn can, shoot the three ball extremely well, they're going to win it. But if Milwaukee can just keep pace with the Nets, I think that this series will definitely go 7 games.
That's what I also think is the big thing, though, is that, can you keep that pace up, though, when you're playing a team like Brooklyn, again, is loaded with talent, again, with Irving and Harden, Blake Griffin now, and, of course, Kyrie Irving. I mean, who knows what really could happen at this rate? And also, Christy Wilson chimes in to say, hello, guys, with the waving emoji. And also, James says, Isaiah Clay? That's a hot take.
Yeah, listen, I thought he could be the next Klay Thompson because he's a guy that's really good, catch and shoot. He can shoot the three ball extremely well. Great on the catch and shoot, like I said earlier. But the defense needs to be a work in progress. He can play defense pretty well. But I thought that if, another year under his belt, if he can keep improving, he's already a really good three-point shooter. He's a guy that can shoot the ball really well. If his defense can improve, I thought that he could be the next Klay Thompson. But I think what Miami needs, and to go to, I think, James's comment about the Kawhi rumors, here's a hot take I'm going to throw out. I don't think they need Kawhi. I think they need Chris Paul. If Chris Paul, who has a player option worth, I believe, $40 million, if Chris Paul opts out of that, I'm not saying he will, but if he opts out of that, the Miami...
But Isaiah, let me stop you. If Chris Paul leaves Phoenix, your man crush Devin Booker ain't going back to the playoffs again for the next couple of years.
Well, Callan, that'll be good because then the dream will be alive. He can come to the Lakers. But the reason why I'm saying Chris Paul to Miami is because I think what Miami needs right now is they need a ball handler. They need a floor general. They need a playmaker that can get Jimmy Butler the ball, that can get Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson the basketball. They don't really have that right now. Like they have Dragic, but he's getting up there in age. And I feel like
health is also becoming an issue too.
Yeah, and exactly. And Chris Paul, I think, would be a better fit for the Miami Heat. I don't know how it would work salary-wise because the Heat, they have Duncan Robinson. He's a free agent, I believe, after this season. So they got a lot of question marks. But if they can bring in Chris Paul, bring in that floor general, it would really help out guys like Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Jimmy Butler, and also Bam Adebayo as well.
We'll see what happens, but I'm not fully sure that the Chris Paul would be one and done with Phoenix. I know, of course, the salary might be an issue for the Suns, but I don't, in fact, think that's going to happen. I think that James is right, though, here. Before we move on here real quick, Isaiah. Could you imagine the arguments, though, between Chris Paul and Jimmy Butler? See, that's what you can't have happen, Isaiah. It may sound good to you, but again, as the former athlete on this panel, you can't have two guys with egos. I know I've said this about Brooklyn plenty of times, though, but eventually there comes that point, though, in a season during a losing streak in the playoffs. And we saw that with the Clippers last year with Paul George having that rah-rah speech after Game 7. And then we had all the players saying, what are you talking about? He had 10 points in the game. And you had all this bickering and infighting. That's what kills teams that don't win championships. There's always something. Now, yes, the Lakers had their issues, though, in the early 2000s with Kobe and Shaq, though. But they were able to kind of put that aside, though, and focus on the team goal. Then they went back to hating each other when the games were over. But as a unit, though, they were able to overcome that when the game was going on, though. But I don't know if this riffraff would work out, though. And I don't think that Pat Riley would tolerate that either, with him being in that in the role of team president and also GM of the Heat.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, but I don't know. I just think that he's a better fit than Kawhi Leonard because right now, Jimmy Butler kind of already plays the position that Kawhi Leonard plays. Guy is a shooting guard / small forward. You could put them together, but like the Clippers, you had Paul George, who is great off the ball, Kawhi Leonard, great off the ball, but they still need that floor general that could get them the basketball. That's why last year they had some tough time on the offensive side of the ball, and then this year they brought in Rajon Rondo. So I think that with Chris Paul, you would have a better flow to the offense as it is.
Possible. But again, I think James brings up a great point, though, about perhaps the infighting. And also, Christy says, if Kawhi does go to Miami, I think they become a much better ball club. Again, that's if, in fact, though, he chooses to leave home again and go to Miami, while Taylor writes in to say that LeBron and AD are going at each other with a laughing face emoji. Now, I think there's a bit of a difference here, though, in regards to players going at each other about the game, not in regards to how they're playing. I think more so to Taylor's point, though, I think, guys, it's more about them perhaps going at each other to make adjustments during the game, not rip them because they missed a play on defense or missed a shot.
Yeah, and when you watch LeBron and AD's relationship, they're both rooting for each other. They both want the best for each other. They have a really cordial type of friendship out there on the basketball court. It's not like what Chris Paul and Jimmy Butler would be if they both were on the same team. You know, Chris Paul, really intense guy. He really, really wants to win, really competitive. Jimmy Butler, the same thing. So I could see, you know, your argument about Chris Paul and Jimmy Butler butting heads if things don't go right, you know, like, because they're both super ultra competitive people. But I don't know. I just think that would be the best fit for the Miami Heat.
Again, we'll see what happens. But again, folks, it'll be a bit of a longer offseason for Miami. Again, they are swept by the Milwaukee Bucks, who get their playoff retribution. Bucks 120, Heat 103. Milwaukee winning 4-0. Moving on to round number 2. To the next game on the schedule, though, Isaiah, the Nuggets and Blazers, Game 4 from Moda Center up there in Portland, Oregon. The Blazers tied this series up, winning 115-95 over Denver on Saturday afternoon from Portland. Isaiah, I think that this is probably the more intriguing matchup in the Western Conference right now because you have two great teams led by probably two very underrated and underappreciated head coaches in Terry Stotts and Mike Malone, but also the Nuggets here trying to get back to the conference final after, of course, their magical upset of the Clippers last year in 7 games, also coming back being down 3-1 versus the Clippers that last season. But of course, though, Isaiah, all of this, though, is happening for the Nuggets right now without Jamal Murray, who, again, I believe is out for the remainder of the season with an injury suffered earlier on. And, of course, the Blazers still firing away, though, with Damian Lillard and also as well with CJ McCollum. But, of course, the Blazers shoot the lights out today and win 115-95 over the Nuggets today. Isaiah, again, it may be preposterous, it may be ludicrous for me to say that this is the best series, though, of the postseason in the West. I think, though, with two evenly matched teams and two very under-the-radar coaches in Stotts and in Malone, that's what makes the series, I think, a little bit more intriguing. Plus, of course, you have, Dame time with Portland and also a lot of, I think, role players or guys trying to step up and fill the void, though, of Jamal Murray being out, though, for the Nuggets. Of course, you have, and also I love the matchup, though, inside between Nurkic and Jokovic. I love the big fellas going at each other. I saw a lot of that, though, in game 3, though, on Friday. I was flipping between that and the Lakers-Suns game on Friday night, and both those guys were just shooting great, whether it was blocks, defense, the jump hooks, but also Nurkic's energy. This may sound stupid, though, Isaiah. To me, other than the Blazers looking at Lillard or McCollum, they feed very well off of Jusuf Nurkic's energy. I mean, every time he gets a basket, he's trying to get the crowd involved. If he makes a block, he's looking at the bench or trying to get teammates going, though. And that can be infectious for a team like the Blazers, who, again, are trying to get over that hump, though, into round 2, into round 3, perhaps, though. And I think as well, though, Isaiah, again, it's two great teams, two under-the-radar coaches, two great big men who are still playing, the game at a high level, though that their position is pretty much, quote-unquote, outdated nowadays. And it's going to make for a great, rest of the way, though, for the series, though. But, Isaiah, overall thoughts today, as, in fact, the Blazers tie this bad boy up 2 games apiece.
I think what this game came down to was the Nuggets just not having Jamal Murray. Me and Trevor on No BS, I believe it was, we made our playoff predictions. I said that I was picking Portland because I thought that with the Blazers having Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, you add Norman Powell, who they got from the Toronto Raptors at the trade deadline, to the mix as well. They had a better backcourt than the Denver Nuggets. This is where the loss of Jamal Murray and also Gary Harris comes to, because Gary Harris, Jamal Murray, they are really good perimeter defenders in addition to being very good on the offensive side of the ball as well. And I think that's what the Nuggets are lacking right now. They are lacking the perimeter defense. You look at the Blazers backcourt in this series. They've been going off in this series, whether it's Lillard, whether it's Carmelo, whether it's CJ McCollum, whether it's Norman Powell. The Denver Nuggets just sadly don't have any answers for those guys on the defensive side of the ball. If they had Harris, if they had Jamal Murray, this would be a totally different series. But those two guys are not here, and the Denver Nuggets are just compromised right now. Yes, you have Jokic. Yes, you have Michael Porter Jr. Yes, you have, Aaron Gordon. But if those guys aren't getting it done on the inside, you're going to get blasted from the three-point line and the perimeter because you don't have the perimeter defense to guard Damian Lillard, to guard CJ McCollum, to guard a Norman Powell. Then you're basically toast. And I think that this is what this game came down to. It was the Portland Trailblazers just shooting the lights out of the basketball and playing with a little bit more urgency than I felt like than the Denver Nuggets, since they were down 2-1. They know that if they had lost this game, they would have lost back-to-back on their home floor, down 3-1 heading into Denver. You're probably not going to win Game 5. The series would probably be over. So that's what I felt like this game came down to. And also, the third quarter was an absolute killer for the Denver Nuggets. They were outscored 36-19 in that third quarter, which blew this game out of the water for the Denver Nuggets.
Definitely agree. And I think, of course, that, guys are trying their best to carry that load, though, again, without Murray. And again, Porter Jr., Michael Porter Jr. can only do so much. Nurk, Jokic, all the cast and crew can only do so much, though. But again, the Blazers able to stave off going down 3-1. They win 115-95 and tied the series up 2 games apiece, heading back to Ball Arena in Denver for Game 5 coming up on Monday. Couple of thoughts about the ball game here, Isaiah, real quick. First and foremost from Casey King, who says that the Blazers looked really good today. Again, I think that just goes back again to how they played today. And also, James says, today's what I expected from Portland, to play like despite Dame only having 10 points. But Norman Powell from Cal's hometown of San Diego played well today for Portland. I think, though, Isaiah, he was probably one of the more underrated, in my mind, trade pieces that was dealt away at the deadline this season. Would you agree?
Oh, totally, man. He was a guy that when Portland got him, I was like, wow, I can't believe Portland got this guy. This guy was in high demand after the season that he had with the Toronto Raptors. And I'm surprised that Portland, of all teams, was the one that ultimately landed him. I know there was other suitors like Dallas. I believe Boston was also in the mix. But obviously Toronto's not going to trade Norman Powell to an in-division rival. So I get why they didn't do that trade. But there were many teams that were in the mix. And I'm just so really shocked that Norman Powell ended up with the Portland Trailblazers of all teams.
James also says, happy for Nurkic. He's been injured the past couple seasons before this season. So again, Portland staves off going down 3-1. It's a 2-2 series ties. Again, the Blazers win 115-95 over Denver from Moda Center up in Portland, Oregon. Back out east we go, Isaiah, as the Sixers and Wizards got Game 3 underway from Capital One Arena in the nation's capital. The Sixers now put the Wizards on the brink of elimination with a 132-103 win today over the Wizards. They now go up 3-0, sending a win away from a sweep and moving on to round number 2. Isaiah, I do believe, though, that this is basically the end of the line right now for Washington again, that there's no way for them to somehow, some way be able to contain Ben Simmons and or Joel Embiid, though, in this, ruthless offensive attack from the Sixers so far. And it's been nothing more than just, domination this whole series, in my mind, by this Doc Rivers-led Sixers ball club. Isaiah, takeaways from tonight's game is, again, the Sixers now sit 1 game away from a sweep and going on to round number 2.
The Washington Wizards are done, folks. They are done. It's going to be a sweep. I believe Game 4 is on Monday. I think that's going to do it. That's going to be a wrap for this series. But about this game, if the Washington Wizards' best chance to win a game in this series was Game 1. They were in it until the very end. And after they lost Game 1, I could just feel the energy just seep away from the Washington Wizards. All the hope that they had, all the optimism coming into the series that they maybe, just maybe, could give the 76ers a run for their money. That all just evaporated after Game 1. I think the the Wizards felt like, yes, they came just so close to beating the 76ers. And I liken them to the Celtics and the Nets, where the Boston Celtics are missing key players, they're injury riddled, they don't really have that chemistry. The Washington Wizards are the same thing. They are they have had some injuries. Thomas Bryant out for the season. Hopefully he comes back soon. That's a big loss for the Washington Wizards, but they just don't have as many star and key supporting cast players as their opponent, the 76ers, and they know that. And I just think that they give it their all, but they just ran out of gas, and I think that's what happened in this game. Westbrook gave it his all. He was playing, I believe, with an ankle injury. He had 26 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, a triple-double in 34 minutes of play. Bradley Beal, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists in 37 minutes of play. Those guys did their thing. And also Rui Hachimura with 10 points. Daniel Gaffer, who's I've been really impressed with, 16 points, 22 in 22 minutes off the bench. They have the talent. They gave it their all, but the Sixers are just far more superiorly talented than the Washington Wizards, and it showed here in this series. Tobias Harris had 20 points, 13 rebounds, 32 minutes of play. Joel Embiid, 36 points, 8 rebounds. Danny Green chipped in with 15 points. Ben Simmons had 14. Seth Curry had 15. The Washington Wizards are just no match for the 76ers, and I fully anticipate that this series is going to be done on Monday.
Isaiah, you also have to wonder, though, I think, man, now this may perhaps be the worst take of the night from either of us here. I know that you've had a couple already. But in my mind, though, and I kind of think back, though, to the LeBron James press conference about the play-in tournament, that maybe, just maybe, though, that all the energy that the Wizards and Lakers perhaps had or have still was kind of all sucked away by those 2 games. Now, I, for one, enjoy the idea of making the bottom part of the conference at least still have a fighting chance to get into the postseason by adding this incentive. Yeah, you can probably have a bad season to start, but I think you can get hot at the right time, though, and somehow sneak your way in, though. But to me, though, Washington just seems to be the one who has suffered the most from that play-in tournament run in regards to, again, how they, struggled all season long, though, and only got in because of the play-in tourney. But I do think, though, that if they can just add 1, maybe 2 more star players, Isaiah, I think that Washington, along with Scott Brooks as the head coach and keeping Russ and Beal together, they could form something pretty intriguing. It may not be like overnight where they perhaps can contend right away in their division, but it could be intriguing, though, to see what 2 more guys or another guy could do, though, with Beal and Westbrook. I think that Hachimura is coming into his own, though, as that big guy down low, though. But you can tell, though, that there still is that gap right now between, the top teams in the division and the bottom teams in the entire, in each conference so far at this rate. Both Taylor and Christie agree that the Sixers are moving on. They have it in the bag. James also says usually the Sixers have a little bit of trouble with their opponents in the postseason, but not this round. Philly will have a long time off, since this Knicks-Hawks series is a toss-up and could go the full 7 games, especially though with Atlanta being in the catbird seat right now. One more NBA game for the evening here, Isaiah, on the Saturday night on the first episode of the 2-man night shift again, though. Our beloved Memphis Grizzlies, Isaiah, fall behind the 8 ball to the Utah Jazz, 121-111. Utah wins Game 3 from FedEx Forum in down there in Memphis, Tennessee. Though the Jazz closed the game, though, on a 12-0 run to take a 2-1 series lead. Isaiah, I still think that Memphis, if they can get Game 4, that they have a chance. But I kind of think, though, much like some of these other series, though, that have, in fact, tilted, basically in favor of one of the higher seeds, though, that this one I kind of feel like, though, was still not quite there just yet, though, because I think, though, that while Memphis has relied so much on Ja Morant, who is the truth, by the way, I need to say that real quick, that at the same time, though, that Memphis probably, they may rock, but they may not be fully capsized right now. But I do think, though, that obviously with one more loss, though, they'd be behind 3-1 heading back to Salt Lake City, though. But I do think, though, Isaiah, that 12-0 run, though, could probably, I think, be a bit of a crushing blow, though, for that team's psyche a bit, though, after the conclusion of the night, though. But Isaiah, obviously, I think we knew, though, that the Jazz were going to come back into that round, that Game 1 loss, though. But Isaiah, overall thoughts, though, as in fact that the Jazz go on top now in the series 2 games to 1, and of course close this game out on a 12-0 run to knock off Memphis in Memphis by the final score again of 121-111.
Callan, I don't know what happened to the Utah Jazz, but these are not the same Utah Jazz that we've seen from the old days. This is a different Utah Jazz team. The old Utah Jazz team were a team that was predicated on defense and just feeding the ball into the paint. And their biggest issue was that they could not shoot the three. But I don't know what's happened to this Utah Jazz team. I think they might have drank some of the Golden State Warriors, potion from the 2015, 2016, 2017 Golden State Warriors, because they're shooting the lights out of the basketball now. And I'm just like, I don't even know what's going on in Utah. The Utah Jazz, last 2 games that have shot the lights out from downtown. I think game 2, they had like 22 threes. Tonight, they had a whole bunch of threes. Bogdanovich was great. Mike Conley Jr. against his former team, 27 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds. Donovan Mitchell was fantastic in this game. Rudy Gobert, who you called out in game 1 or after game 1, he's been great. 15 points, 14 rebounds, just asserting his presence in the paint. And then Jordan Clark.
Isaiah, I didn't call out Gobert. I called out the Jazz for not playing Donovan Mitchell in game 1.
My bad. I think it was me that called out Rudy Gobert. I'm sorry about that. It's late in the night, folks. But I called out Rudy Gobert after game 1. I said that, the reason why the Jazz lost game 1 was because Rudy Gobert did not assert his presence in the paint. And he needed to be more aggressive in the paint. And he's been that in the last couple of games in this series. And, the Grizzlies, I like the Grizzlies, but this Grizzlies team, they are very resilient. When they're down big, there's no fight in this, or there's no quit in this team. You saw it in game 2 where they were down like 20, and then they roared back and they were down, I believe, 4 at one point before the Jazz came back and took control of that game. Tonight, the Jazz were up a whole bunch of points. The Grizzlies, no quit whatsoever, rally back, come back, and they tie the ball game, and then Utah takes back control of this ball game. This is a young team that has a lot of energy. They have no quit inside of this Memphis Grizzlies team, but I think what this Grizzlies team is lacking, Callan, is three-point shooting, and I think that's what the Jazz have that the Grizzlies don't, and it's clearly being shown and being exposed right now in this series.
I think if you're a sportsman, though, you love seeing that team that just doesn't quit. They're scrappy. They're going to keep going till the clock hits 0 or the final out quarter, though. So, again, all the love and respect, though, to Memphis for, again, doing their damnedest to get back in this ball game. So we'll see how things were going. Plenty of thoughts about this game. First, James says the Jazz should be running away with the series now unless that Ja Morant goes wild again. He also says that Bojan Bogdanovich is an awesome shooter. I mean, both the Bogdanovich kids are pretty damn awesome at this rate. And Casey also says that the Jazz are back in control. And also Gonzalez is back saying that the Grizz do lack the experience as well. But I think that with time, that experience is going to be a lot better when, in fact, that this team, gets more experience under their belt in the postseason.
Callan, I want to go to, I believe it was Casey's comment about the Jazz being in control. Yes, they are in control of the series right now, but I don't think, to Callan's point, that the series is over. I think game 4 is going to be the biggest telling sign of this game. This is the biggest game of the Memphis Grizzlies season. If they could take that game, I think that this series would definitely go 6 games, and it could definitely go 7 games as well, because the environment in Memphis is very boisterous. The Grizzlies have played well, and I don't think that Jazz, the 3-point barrage that the Jazz are on right now, I don't believe that that's going to continue, because yes, you can have a great shooting night, 1 game, 2 games, but not for 3.
There's no way that a team can carry that momentum across. I say that a lot, though, about basketball, Isaiah. There's no way, though, that a ball club can keep making all those threes or keep those hot streaks going. You're going to eventually start missing shots. That's what I said, though, earlier in the week, though, talking about the Nets in regards to how they had put up like 130, 140 points. Like, can that production keep going, though? For Utah, I mean, this may be a game where you probably don't live and die by the 3. Feed Gobert inside. Let Mitchell work inside the perimeter or around the perimeter and don't set up with the outside threes. And again, we'll see what happens. But again, though, I think that James is right, though, that the Grizzlies lack experience for now. Give it a couple of years, and that team's going to be extremely fun to watch, though, when in fact the time does move on. But again, folks, that is the Jazz holding off the Grizzlies in Memphis, 121-111. The Utah Jazz now leave a series 2-1, heading into game number 4 coming up on Monday from FedEx Forum. To the Diamond, Isaiah, a couple of baseball games on the night shift scheduled tonight. Of course, the hometown Oakland A's hosting the LA Angels today. Alex Cobb and the A's combined to shut out the A's today from the Coliseum 4-0. The Angels win their 23rd game of the year. They're now 23-29, while the A's falter on the afternoon and being shut out, and the bats being kept at bay. Isaiah, you're at the ball game today. Tell us the scoop.
The scoop was that the A's offense just continued to not hit in the early innings. And, they were determined to get to the 7th, 8th, and 9th and try to rally their way back. And the Angels just said, not today. Not after we've given you guys the last 2 games in the late innings. And Alex Cobb, he was tremendous in this game. I was very surprised because when I went to the ballpark in Oakland today, I took a look at his ERA, and his ERA was, I believe, like 4.32 at the start of the day. And I was like, yeah, the A's are going to get him because they've had success in the past against Alex Cobb. Alex Cobb, he's a fly ball pitcher. Day games in Oakland is when the ball flies a lot at the Coliseum. And, we had Frankie Montas pitching out on the mound, and Frankie Montas has kind of been inconsistent this entire season, but he's had a lot of success against the Angels, so I thought the A's were going to get him, but the offense couldn't hit. Alex Cobb was fantastic in this game. I think he pitched 7 innings. He was mixing up his pitches extremely well. Fastball, curveball, the changeup, the slider. The A's could not hit any of that. And then for the A's, I think the death nail on this game was the throwing error by Aramis Garcia in the 5th inning. I think the Angels, it was 0-0. The Angels had 1 out, I believe, with runners at 3rd and 1st, and the Angels try a bunt, and Matt Olson plays the bunt really well, fires a perfect throw to Aramis Garcia, who's the A's backup catcher. He's in the game starting for Sean Murphy. He tries to catch the throw, and he just flat out misses it. Like, it was a perfect throw. He flat out misses it. I think he took his eye off the ball for 1 second to see where the runner was. Flat out misses it. Ball goes to the backstop. Angels score a run. And then I believe they had the other 2 runners. They moved to 2nd and 3rd after that. And Shohei Ohtani with line drive base hit. And that's all she wrote for the Oakland A's. I think that error right there was the thing that helped, or was the thing that really killed the A's today, because when you're I don't care which team you're playing, whether you're playing the Dodgers, the Padres, or the Angels, the Mariners, the Rangers, no matter what team you're playing, they're still major leaguers. So if you make like terrible errors like this, where on a perfect throw home, you flat out miss it, you're not going to win ball games like this. And also, you're not going to win ball games when you're constantly striking out. That's the problem I've had with the A's on this homestand, is that the games are just so boring, especially on this homestand. Every time I look out on the at the plate, the A's hitters are in an 0-2 count, or they're in a 1-2 count, and they end up swinging and missing. So it's like, I think what the A's need to do is they got to clean up that defense. Their defense has been solid, but it's gotten bad as of late. They also need to work on their hitting approach, because you can't have this strikeout or home run approach come postseason time. Teams that win championships, they work the counts, they put up good at bats, 2 strikes, they choke up, have good 2-strike approaches, and then they also do the little things right. Like if you have a runner at 2nd, nobody out, they get him to 3rd, and then they get him home with a ground ball out or a sac fly instead of a home run. And I think that's what the A's need to improve on. And I think the reason why I'm taking a lot of stock in these games against the Angels. I know it's May right now, but the reason why is because if you look at the A's schedule right now in June, Callan, if you look at the schedule, the A's have the Angels, then they've had the Angels, the Mariners, the Angels, the Mariners, and then they have, I believe, the Colorado Rockies for 2. Then they got the Kansas City Royals, and then after that they have the Angels and the Mariners. This stretch right here is one of the easiest stretch I've seen a major league team have on their schedule. If the A's can win every one of these series, they would have the best record in baseball by the end of June, early July. And the reason why I'm saying that they need to win that, like they need to win series in that stretch, is because if they can have the best record in baseball entering the trade deadline, it's going to empower Billy Beane, the A's general manager, to go bold at the trade deadline and try to push for a World Series.
Just hold your horses. At least get to the All-Star break first, because usually that's where teams begin to separate from the field. I wouldn't look too far ahead to the deadline, and no, you're not getting Scherzer or Story.
But this would help push Billy Beane towards the path of, putting all your chips into the middle and going for it. And I think that's what Billy needs to do this season or this trade deadline. And I really hope he does it. And I hope the A's continue to play great baseball and make Billy Beane go for it all this season.
Just worry about the All-Star break first. About the game, though, I do think, though, I agree, though, Isaiah, that you just have that day, though, at the plate where your offense is just not clicking. And I think today, though, was a perfect example. But that's the beauty of baseball. You get another game tomorrow, though. But, of course, I do think, though, that even though that this Angel Ball Club has been ravaged by, off-the-field controversy and turmoil, Mike Trout being out for several weeks because of that strained calf he suffered in Boston, and, of course, that there's not really a lot of, potent offense, a lot of potent offense, minus Ohtani, maybe Upton, maybe David Fletcher, and that there's a lot of holes maybe in that lineup. And, of course, Albert Pujols now playing his games up in L.A. with the Dodgers, of course, after he was released earlier in the season in a very, very controversial move made by the Angel organization as well, is that they're still obviously out there playing and that they're going to keep battling regardless of the record right now, though. But at least, though, with the game today, at least, though, I mean, I don't want to put all the stock on the air. I just think it was more so, it kind of began to open the floodgates, though. But I think at the same time, though, just a bad day with the offense. And, of course, a pitcher like that, though, makes hitters like that look foolish. So we'll say how, in fact, things go. Plenty of thoughts, though, about the Angels playing today with the win over the Isaiah's hometown ball club. James says the Angels with their first and probably only shutout of their season. Also, James says that small ball play was lucky with the air, but it worked. I think, though, Isaiah, in a day and age, though, where teams don't do a lot of small ball, we saw that it still works even in the year of the home run and strikeouts and stuff like that.
Joe Madden, the master of the bunt, the guy that played or managed in the NL with the Chicago Cubs, he knows a thing or two about small ball, so I'm not surprised that the Angels pulled out that play.
James also says that the fact that Mark Cano comes up to a Madonna song is something I definitely respect. Also, Taylor says that the Angels should not have gotten rid of Albert Pujols. And also he says, please don't forget about Anthony Rendon, who was also, again, injured with I believe his growing again has been flaring up on him again, sadly, after the past several weeks. But again, the Angels shutting out the A's today from the Coliseum in Oakland 4-0. The Angels, I won't say a geographical location for that franchise, but the Angels 4-0 winners over the swinging A's from Isaiah. What do you guys call your home ballpark again? Like, it's gone through like 10,000 name changes over the past 2 years.
I don't even know the latest name. I mean, we just call it the Oakland Coliseum, but I think it might have a separate name now. I don't know.
I believe it is actually Rickey Henderson Field at the Ring Central Coliseum, I think. But then again, no one calls it the Ring Central Coliseum. It's just like all those years with Network Associates or McAfee. Down Isaiah in some interleague action today, the hometown Padres facing the Houston Astros. For the first time in franchise history, the Padres play 4 consecutive extra inning ball games and are able to come all the way back from a 6-0 deficit to win the ball game over the Astros in Minute Maid Park in Houston. 11-8 San Diego in 12 over the Astros to win another series and look to go to 8-0 on Sunday inside of interleague play versus the American League West opponents. Again, Isaiah, you said it though at the top of the show though, but I will say it further here though, is that this is the new version of the Padres. This is not your same old Padres of years past where they just roll over and play dead, and the game's already over after the Padres give up a run in the first inning. The game's already over. But I think though, Isaiah, that especially as of last season and into this season though, the cardiac, I think I called them the frantic Friars last season was the nickname I gave them, because they had so many, games that they were down and out for the count. But unlike years past, so this ball club rallies back to either maybe lose the game by a run, but you had the tying run on third with 2 outs, or, or they made the game interesting. And this is not like years past, though, where, they fall behind 1-0 in the second or 2-0. It's like, well, this game's already over. I'm going to go and watch a different sporting event, though. But that they keep you on the edge of your seat, though. But I think, though, Isaiah, that today, though, you want to talk about errors, though, Isaiah. How about the dropped pop fly foul out that would have ended the ball game with no one better than Fernando Tatis Jr. being at the plate? The pitches, hit high in the air, and the backspin. I will say, though, the backspin was very, very terrible, and the route was great by the first baseman, though, but he fell, lost his footing, though, and of course the ball falls. Next pitch, Nando clobbers a game-tying 3-run homer on top of the railroad tracks, and of course the Padre fans that are in fact down in Houston go bananas. And then, of course, counter-punch in extra innings, though, and of course, Isaiah, it's Will Myers barely clearing the right field wall down there at Minute Maid Park. Again, the Friars win 11-8 over Houston. Again, the frantic Friars do it again with coming from behind, though. And Isaiah, I do have to kind of give some praise to Jesse Agler and Tony Gwynn Jr., the Padre radio broadcast team on KWFN 97.3, The Fan down here in San Diego. They have been keeping a list, basically, of all of the moments. And I think I said to your point earlier on in the baseball segment here, championship caliber teams have to have some stuff happen along the way to kind of get to the promised land. Of course, the Padres have their first no-hitter in franchise history. They have the miraculous comeback against the Dodgers on national television, being down 7-1, 8-1, 9-1. They come all the way back, tie the game, win the game in extra innings. They also, of course, earlier this year, though, as well, they have the Dodger comeback. They have the 9-0 homestand where, again, they swept St. Louis and Colorado and Seattle. And then I think, though, Isaiah, that you kind of have to put these, the stretch of 4 games in extra innings up there. Yeah, they lost, one of them to the Brewers, though, or, they lost one or they split those 4. But then today, though, I think you have to add that moment, though, because I think, though, Isaiah, any other first baseman makes that foul out grab. The Padres lose the game, and this series is tied 1 game apiece, though. And at the same time, though, literally the next pitch, it reminded me so much a little bit of the miscalled third strike, though it pains me to say that the miscalled third strike in Game 1 of the 98 World Series, so when the Padres were playing the Yankees, though, and Rich Garcia behind the plate didn't call strike 3, was right down the middle to Tino Martinez, who then hit a grand slam the next pitch. This reminds me a little bit of that, because here, this game could have been over by that foul out. It falls behind the backup first baseman, per James in the chat box. And literally the 1-1 pitch that is thrown next, that fastball that broke right over the middle of the plate into Junior's nitro zone is absolutely clobbered and onto the tracks to tie the ball game up. Then, of course, the counterpunch, as I mentioned, and then Will Myers, who again has been I believe the longest tenured Padre since 2015, and he's been waiting to kind of see this ball club turn a corner. Again, had a great resurgence last season. Again, he's the hero today, though. But Isaiah, I think, though, like I said, though, in regards to the Grizzlies in the NBA, the Padres and Grizzlies are a perfect marriage. 2 teams who are fun to watch and 2 teams who don't give up regardless of the scoreline. Your thoughts on this ball game? As again, it does help out the A's, but more importantly, the Padres gain ground on the Dodgers and keep their first place holding for the time being.
Well, my first thought on this game is that I'm going to call up A's president Dave Cabo tomorrow morning and get him on the phone and tell him to build Fernando Tatis and Will Myers. I know they don't even play for the A's, but I don't care. Build them a statue outside the Coliseum after today's game, because y'all helped us keep our lead, which we were so thankful for. But besides,
Isaiah, it's May 29th. The wild card standings are already out this early. I hate that. Please give your thoughts on the game.
But about this game, though, like you said, the Padres, they have no quit in them. They were down 6-1, and normally, when you're watching a game and it's 6-1, entering I believe it was the 6th inning, or in the 6th inning, you're just like, yeah, it's over. It's over. Team's probably not going to come back. I think at that time the Padres had like a 5% chance of winning the game. I might be wrong on that, but they had a very, very, very low percentage of winning that game. And thank you to the Astros bullpen, who has been absolute rubbish this entire season. Callan, you know it, I know it, and everybody else knows it. This is their weakness. Their biggest weakness. They have a good starting rotation. They have a great lineup, but their bullpen always craps the bed. And Dusty Baker, poor guy, doesn't know who to turn to in that bullpen to give him quality innings. Because when you look at it, Brooks Raley, you cannot trust him. Andre Scrub, he's living up to his name. Joe Smith, you can't trust him. He gave up 2 runs today. Ryan Presley, the often reliable closer, he had an off day. But you can't.
Mainly a drop foul out that would have ended the ball game. Next pitch he threw was a home run.
Exactly, that drop foul out, that was big. But you can trust. But he's not really a closer. Brandon Bielak, you can't really trust him. Stanek's been inconsistent. Garza Jr., he had like a 50-point-something ERA.
And took the loss today, too.
Exactly. The Astros, that's the secret of beating them. If you can, hold the game close and get to their bullpen is always going to blow it. And that's what happened today. The Padres, they were down 6-1. They got to the Astros bullpen, and the Astros bullpen pitched like how my high school bullpen would pitch in these situations. So that's the weakness of the Astros. They have to address that bullpen if the Houston Astros want to win a World Series championship or even get to the World Series, because with that leaky bullpen, you're not going anywhere. You're probably going to get bounced out of the divisional round if you even get that far.
The only sad part about the Padres winning in extra innings yesterday and today, though, Mark Melancon had his 16-for-16 save streak snapped, though, because of the runner on second base rule. So back-to-back days, the Shark blew saves, but ultimately the Padres won both games and, of course, had that 7-run outburst on Friday when they knocked off Houston at Minute Maid Park on Friday. James first writes, the Oakland Alameda County Coliseum and the California Angels are the only correct answers when referring to the ballpark in Oakland and to the Angel franchise. Sorry, James, I wasn't alive for California. Anaheim, 1998, my first ever Major League ball game. James also says that the Tatis Jr. home run reminded him a lot of when Albert Pujols hit that home run off Brad Lidge in 2004. It shut the crowd up promptly, minus the Friar faithful who was down there in Houston this weekend.
I got a question about that. Was that home run that Pujols hit, did that hit the train tracks or was it off right field? I don't really.
No, it was to the train tracks in right field. Or
okay, yeah. Then it definitely reminds me of the Pujols home run after what Tatis hit, because Tatis's homer, Callan, correct me if I'm wrong, that went to the train tracks as well, right?
Went over it in left field, yeah. Ooh. And by the way, I feel bad for all the the teams on the road who are having their broadcasters call games from the press box of their home ballparks. Don Orsillo thought that the ball was going foul because he kept saying toward the pole. Then it ultimately was still fair by about, plenty of, long ways away, from being foul. So eventually we got to get these away guys back in the actual ballpark. And James also said, though, that the drop pop-up by the backup first baseman was not Yuli Gurriel, as he had the day off today. Also, John Alcorn from behind the scenes says, man, I can't wait for Isaiah's heart to break when Sonny Gray comes to the San Diego Padres. I'll take him and Scherzer both for $200, Alex. James also says, these are not your brother's Padres. I think to my point again, the frantic Friars, Isaiah, they love to come back and make the games interesting. Now, yeah, they lost a couple of those games, though, that they were, in fact, behind by a lot. But again, that's all you can ask for, I think, though, Isaiah, when you are, in fact, playing from behind all day, is at least getting a chance. And again, they had that chance, though, against the Dodgers, I believe, earlier in that series in L.A., where they won 3 out of 4, where they had that chance, though, to, at least tie the game, and they end up falling, with the strikeout. But still, though, these are not the same Padres from years past, whether you want to believe it or not.
Yeah, definitely. And these Padres, Callan, they remind me of the 2018 Oakland A's. My first year working for the A's, and I had a close-up view of that team. And when you watch that team, they were young, they were hungry, they had a lot of fun out there on the field, whether it was, doing the walk-off celebrations or anything like that. They played together, and also they had that belief late in the game that no matter who was pitching, no matter what team that they were going up against, that they were going to come back and win that game or make the game close. And that's what happened that's what these Padres remind me of. These Padres remind me of that A's team that just don't quit, and that the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning, no matter if they're down 5-0 or 6-1 or whatever, they're going to come back or make it a really thrilling game until the end.
Isaiah, I'll counter that and say that the Padres, in my mind, I know that you went with your AL ball club, so I'll go with my AL ball club, that the Padres remind me of the 2002 Anaheim Angels. More of a veteran-led group, some young budding stars in that group, though, but again, a veteran-led ball club, again, like the Padres are with Machado, Hosmer, Myers, guys like that, Mark Melancon in the bullpen, Drew Pomeranz in the bullpen. And then you have those young stars, again, like the Tatis Juniors of the world, the Jake Cronenworths of the world, even Ha-Seong Kim, who's been playing a lot recently because of injuries. But that the 0-2 Angels, I think, showed a lot of that prowess, though. Yeah, they had a slow start that year, but again, House of Pain jump around, Ace Ventura's monkey jumping up and down for joy, maybe perhaps is one other thing, though. But that the never say die attitude, though, I think, is what Rory Marcus, the late great Angel TV announcer and radio announcer, said, though, about the 0-2 ball club, though, with like Erstad and Salmon, Garrett Anderson, who's always clutch in a big situation, Troy Percival in the bullpen. Then, yeah, you had your John Lackeys of the world, your David Ecksteins of the world, your Sean Figgins of the world, though, were all these young kids that they mesh so well and stuff of that nature. So we'll see how things go. James also says that, man, Jesse Agler is awesome. And James, as you know very well, man, some very big shoes to fill, though, with Ted Leitner moving on from the Padres after 41 years, and he's done a phenomenal job so far on KWFM. And James also says that Ryan Presley was doing well until today. Dun, dun, dun. And also, John from behind the scenes says that guys that have been there, done it, that's why they have that comeback belief. I think it's just a collective effort across the board, though. And Adam also says that he trusts the first two Padre starters in Darvish and Snell, but not Cowan's former teammate Joe Musgrove, not Paddock, and not Lamet. Sorry, Adam, I have to respectfully disagree, though. I trust Musgrove and Lamet more. Paddock's gotten better, but that, Musgrove, he's a San Diego legend now. He's already from here. He was a teammate of mine, though. I mean, this guy's got lifetime beer supply from Ballast Point here in San Diego. He's got, free coffee for his life because of the no-hitter. I trust Joe a bit more because I know but I think, though, that even with Snell right now, he's been a little rocky, too. A lot of these guys have been very rocky, so I wouldn't go as far as the back half of the rotation. But also, Adam, don't forget, we got Mike Clevenger coming back in 2022, so it's far from being over with the Padres being around here. They're not going to be a one-hit wonder, I'll tell you that much right here and right now. But I trust 4 of the 5 right now, and I would even throw Ryan Weathers in there, too. It's kind of been like our 6-man right now, kind of filling voids because of all the injuries we've had so far in the rotation. But again, the Padres, the frantic Friars, do it again. 11-8 San Diego coming back from behind to knock off the Astros in 12 today from Minute Maid Park. 11-8 San Diego, who still maintains their 1.5 lead over San Francisco, and now I believe a 2.5 game lead at this early juncture over the rival Dodgers for first place. Sadly, Isaiah, some very sad news today to close out the program before we get to one final segment here, though. And that is, of course, Isaiah, the 7'4" great and the multiple-time NBA Defensive Player of the Year, Mark Eaton of the Utah Jazz, sadly passed away on Saturday after injury suffered following a bike accident. Mark was 64 years old. And Isaiah, I know that, of course, man, that we saw Yao Ming, who was 7'6", I believe, play for a bit. We know about Greg Oden with the Blazers, who did not pan out because of his height and all of his injuries. But Mark Eaton, I think, was the very first true center you would not want to post up against or try to shoot or try to take a shot pass because of his size. And again, this guy was basically, I think, like the one guy you would not want to go inside and face because of his height, the length, and again, it's kind of basically just put a hand up and the shot's blocked out of bounds, 10 rows deep, though. And sadly, again, folks, Mark Eaton passing away earlier on Saturday due to complications of injury suffered from a bike accident. Mark was, again, 64 years old. Isaiah, I do think, though, probably a pretty rough day for the Jazz organization, who, again, don't have a lot of those star players that we all know and love from the past. I know, of course, Jerry Sloan, God bless his soul, one of the greatest NBA coaches of all time. Of course, John Stockton, Karl Malone in the 90s. But Mark Eaton, I think that Mark Eaton, in my opinion, was kind of the first guy that basically put that Jazz franchise on the map. Yeah, you had Gail Goodrich back in the day, but again, they're in New Orleans, not a lot of attendance. Again, somewhat in a way, though, the New Orleans Jazz were a lot like the San Diego Clippers. No attendance, no one would go to the games, bad team on the floor, last place finishes. And again, the team goes to Utah, though. I think that Mark Eaton is the guy that I think a lot of Jazz fans probably credit putting their club on the map, though, back with his day. Yeah, it didn't pan out with championships, Isaiah, though. But again, though, those star players, though, always have a place, though, in franchise lore, whether they win or they don't win or they lose. So we'll see how things go or how things went, though. But Isaiah, any thoughts to pass along again as Mark Eaton, sadly, due to a bike accident, sadly passes away at the age of 64. Isaiah, you're muted, buddy.
Sorry about that. Thoughts on this is that, first of all, I want to send my condolences to his family. I'm praying for them. It's very, very tough loss. This guy, from all accounts, he was a great human being. He was a guy that, was a great mentor to a lot of people, especially Rudy Gobert, who posted a nice tribute on his Twitter account. If you haven't seen it yet, I really recommend you guys all to go see it. But like you said, Callan, it's really these small market organizations, they don't really have, like the Lakers with all their star players like the Will Chamberlains, Kobe Bryant's, LeBron James, all those guys. So when you have your stars, you need to hang on to them, and they definitely belong in franchise lore forever. And, this guy, he was a great basketball player, great shot blocker. I didn't have the opportunity to watch him play because he played before I was, born onto this earth, but he was a great player. 7'4", like you said, a guy that made it really tough for opposing centers to go up against. And, most importantly, I think what really stands out, though, is that he was a really amazing human being and just a really good person to a lot of people that were associated with the NBA. And he's definitely going to be missed forever.
Isaiah, I remember hearing some stories from Shaq about when George Mikan, like the original Laker from their days in Minneapolis, passed away. And, of course, George made the Mikan drill for centers famous, where, again, you would work on your hook shot left, hook shot right, and alternate for like a minute or for a long time. And you would go, you'd swing left and go and shoot. You'd swing right and shoot, where, again, you're working with both hands. And, again, George made that a big thing, though. And I recall, though, that Shaq also said, though, that they had a photo, I think, with Shaq, I believe George Mikan, and I want to say Kareem or Magic, about like the great Lakers centers of the day when Shaq first came to the Lakers in the 90s. And that I think that Shaq said, I don't recall the exact quote, I think that Shaq said, though, that when George Mikan died, like a little piece of him also died, though, as well, in regards to about, shot blocking, shooting, stuff like that, being that big guy down low, though. And Isaiah, you're right, though, that a lot of these small market teams just don't have like the stars. They don't have, the championship lore or the nostalgia of like the Bulls or the Celtics or the Lakers or, any other team like Golden State even recently, that they don't have a lot to cling on to. And especially though when you see like, I think with the Jazz, though, I think of Jerry Sloan, I think of Stockton and Malone and, those guys running rampant in the late 90s. I think about, those players. And now I think about the present day, though. And again, I think that Rudy Gobert, though, I think with that tribute, though, is that Isaiah, these guys might retire, though, but though, that whether they work in the front office or they come around me so often, though, that the players, that they talk their ear off. They ask him questions. I think if I was to, talk to, one of the, for example, talk to Lawrence Tanter, the Lakers 38-year PA guy, I would just be, talking his ear off about, about this, like, what's your favorite championship? I do that a lot already as is, though, with people I meet in the field. But I think, though, the Mark Eaton, I think, definitely is the guy that I think Jazz fans, I would say, would owe a lot, though. I think that Stockton and Malone helped kind of reinvigorate, like, the interest in the Jazz back in the 90s. But that Mark Eaton is a guy that I think, though, put that franchise permanently in whole on the map in the NBA.
Yeah, he definitely did. When the Jazz first moved to Utah, they didn't really have that star player that captivated all audience. And Mark Eaton was kind of that guy. He was a 7'4", 4 shot blocker. Centers couldn't get anything going up against him. He was the guy that really, I believe, put the Utah Jazz on the map. And, I feel for the Utah Jazz organization. I know like what they must be going through right now must be really, really hard. And I feel really bad for them. And I hope that, prayers go out to them. Prayers go out to Mark Eaton and his family. And, Mark Eaton's going to be missed forever. He did a lot of tremendous things for the NBA.
And certainly as well, our prayers still go out to Elgin Baylor and his family. Again, Elgin, the main guy who was one of the first guys to make the move from Minneapolis to the Lakers. And again, was one of the very few who didn't win a ring with the Lakers back in the day. And again, his passing earlier in the year. Plenty of thoughts still. First from Adam about the Giants. In baseball, he says the Giants have been by far my most surprising team, along with the Red Sox for the most surprising team in Major League Baseball. James Gonzalez chimes in to say that Mark Eaton was very intriguing because he wouldn't have to jump to block or dunk the ball. We'll have to find some videos on him to watch later in the evening. Casey King also says, love watching Mark play the game. Great shot blocker. Met him once and he was a really cool guy and very cool with the fans. He will be missed. Rest in peace to Mr. Eaton. And also Christy Wilson says that may he rest in peace, and along as well with the network and our good man, John Alcorn. But again, folks, sadly, some sad news today on this Saturday. But once more, Mark Eaton, the legendary center for the Utah Jazz, passing away today due to injury suffered in a bike accident. Mark Eaton was 64. With that, Isaiah, we're bringing it back for the first time in quite a while. Going into the Game Balls segment, where again, Isaiah will be giving out some of our favorite nods to some great performances on the day. Isaiah, we'll start with you for your game ball or game balls for this Saturday night.
All right, I've been waiting for this for the last 48 hours because after the performance I witnessed on Thursday, I definitely have to give him a game ball. And Callan, I think you know who that is. Number 40, Chris Bassett. This guy was my Cy Young Award pick before the season. And everybody said, Isaiah, you need to be drug tested. You need to be drug tested immediately. You gotta, you're really going crazy right now. And, I know the first 2 starts that Chris Bassett had this season, they were terrible. He gave up like a combined, I believe it was 15 runs in 2 starts, both against the Astros and the Dodgers. And he's really settled down. In his last 10 starts, he's had 6 innings complete in each one of those starts, which is very, very impressive. And now it's capped off with that 9-inning complete game, 2-hit shutout where, Callan, you might want to put that two-way screen back on because I know you probably will walk off the set after this, but he looked like Nolan Ryan out there on the mound on Thursday night. He really did. He looked like Nolan Ryan with that loopy curveball. The Angels couldn't hit that thing whatsoever. They looked absolutely foolish. The fastball, he was blowing it right by him. The slider, the cutter. He was just untouchable on Thursday night. And also, I know they got a couple of hits against him, but a couple of those hits, they just happened to find holes on the field. It was kind of lucky hits that I call, but it wasn't, they were cheap hits. But great performance by Chris Bassett. This guy has had a long road from his White Sox days to being with the A's, and he's gone through so much with struggles and then Tommy John surgery, and then he had, I believe, a setback with the Tommy John rehab, and then he struggled again, was inconsistent, and then 2020 had his breakout year, and 2021, I think he's going to be even better. Kudos to Chris Bassett. What a great performance. I know he was very emotional post-game. He started tearing up about his journey and how this performance really was the thing that really capped everything. And, kudos to him. I think he's going to continue to pitch lights out this entire season. He showed on Thursday night that he is a true ace and that he is Cy Young worthy. So that's who I'm giving my game ball out to. I'm going to give him a golden baseball.
Isaiah, he still has 7 no-hitters to go to tie Nolan Ryan, so I would lay off on that comparison, as James said. I have 3 of them to give out tonight for game balls. I first want to give one out to David Pasternak of the Boston Bruins, who had the hat trick tonight for the Bruins as they beat the New York Islanders in Game 1 of the second round for the Eastern Conference playoffs in the NHL today, as the Bees win 5-2, but also play the first game for the NHL. First 100% capacity filled game was played in the NHL. Their first game was played tonight at full capacity for the first time in 14 months at the Garden in Boston. And of course, Pasternak caps it up with the hat trick to give the Bruins the victory over New York 5-2 from the Garden in Boston. Second game ball goes, of course, to Fernando Tatis Jr. for, again, keeping the Padres in that ball game, that game-tying home run to, of course, help the Padres beat the Astros today down there in Houston. But number one, though, and I think that Isaiah will thoroughly enjoy this, though, my number one game ball today goes to all of the workers working live sporting events. I got to go to my second live game today, post-COVID vaccination back in March, plus also being able to get away for the season. I went and caught the LA FC versus New York City FC MLS match today. Big thanks again to all the ticket reps, all of the ushers, the police department being there today, and for all the essential employees, again, who are doing their best to make sure that people were following all the rules and stuff of that caliber. And again, it felt great to be in a section with fully vaxxed individuals, and also, of course, great to be back at a sporting event and be back around people that you obviously don't know, but of course, being at games, though, and stuff of that nature. So again, a major tip of the cap to all the game day employees, myself included, though, of course, if I was actually working a game, but to everyone else around the stadium, again, ticket takers, ushers, concession workers, you name it, for, again, being there for us and, again, allowing us to get some small sense of normalcy back in our lives at this rate. And also, Christy Wilson says that her game ball goes to Brittany Griner of the Mercury today for the dunk she had today in the Mercury's game versus the Dallas Wings at UTA in Arlington on Saturday afternoon. And sadly for the Mercury, they'll be without the star player and the GOAT, Diana Taurasi, who suffered a fractured sternum earlier in the season. So we wish DT all of the best going forward. With that, folks, we'll wrap up for the night and head on into tonight's final thoughts. One final segment, folks, on this first episode of the two-man night shift, being back with yours truly, Callan McClurg and Isaiah Leung. First and foremost, Mr. Casey King says, I must go to a LAFC match this year with the stadium looking so cool. Casey, I mean, believe me, I've been to both stadiums in LA County with both the Galaxy and LAFC. I just thoroughly enjoy the LAFC environment because it is a more inclusive or welcoming environment. I kind of talked about this in a rant I had on the Sports Lounge back in January when the Galaxy hired a new head coach, and you can go and find it on YouTube and on Facebook, but that the environment more so created at Bank of California Stadium versus Dignity Health Sports Park is about 10 times more fun than what it would be, I would say, at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson. But I mean, then again, any soccer match you go to, whether you're in a rowdy section or not, it's still fun. I mean, because they add a whole nother layer and stuff of that nature. But I just thoroughly enjoy going to, seeing either team play. But at this rate, LAFC is kind of winning over the fandom right now. And Casey said, even better, it's right by the LA Coliseum. Yes, it is. I was going to take a picture and troll Isaiah, but I didn't feel like doing that. But Isaiah, your final thoughts for the night show are what?
Well, my final thoughts is that, first of all, I want to thank our fans for tuning in to the program tonight. I want to thank James. I want to thank Casey. I want to thank John Alcorn, who is heading to bed. So, John, shout out to you, man. Have a great night. Hopefully we see you tomorrow on the night shift. Christy Wilson. I also want to thank my guy, Adam Barber, Ace. If you guys haven't heard the news, MI6 and Coast to Coast, we are going to be doing a partnership between both networks, which is we're going to, be cross-promoting. Some of our crew from MI6 will be heading over to Coast, like me and Trevor have, for some of their programs, and then vice versa. They will be coming to join some of our programs. So it's very, very exciting time here. Can't wait, to partner up with Coast to Coast like that. Banner says down below. Make sure you guys go check out the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network for great shows like cooking shows, trivia shows, movie shows. I think
Cooking with Isaiah is not one of them.
Yes, Cooking with Isaiah is not one of them, but I can confirm that Karaoke with Isaiah is going to be on that list as well. After my baby. after my Baby Shark performance, but I make sure you guys go check it out. Great group of guys there at the Coast to Coast Entertainment Network. Also want to thank James Gonzalez and also Taylor Sean Ogata. I believe we had Chris Woodman Z as well. We had Brandon Herrera, and I think we had a few more. Ishmael Lancaster, and also we had so many comments tonight. It's hard. David Frecker. And I think that's it. But thanks to everybody that tuned into our program tonight. We really, really appreciate all the love and the support. But my final thoughts is a couple of things. Number one, I want to give a big shout out right now to all the Japanese media members that came to the Coliseum to cover the Angels A series. Really nice people. If you guys have the time, go check out their work. Great people. I got a chance to talk to them, and a lot of them traveled from Tokyo, Japan to come to the Oakland Coliseum. Really hope you guys all had a great time. Thank you guys so much for being such great guests this weekend. It was really fun and really great to be able to host you guys. Hopefully you guys all come back. And the last thing that I have, and Callan, you might want to put that two-way screen back on because I know you're going to love this. But, folks, I am not Shohei Ohtani's brother, no matter.
I can't believe that actually happened.
Yes. Folks at the Coliseum have been coming up to me and asking me, am I Shohei Ohtani's brother? I may have a bat with me, and I may be able to hit some baseballs really well. But no, I am not Shohei Ohtani's brother, even though I wish I was Shohei Ohtani's brother and had a great swing like Shohei Ohtani.
I mean, just to have a small portion of that salary, for heaven's sakes. One quick thought here. James Gonzalez says, I saw that LAFC fans don't stop the noise through the game. Absolutely amazing. James, I can confirm, having seen New York City FC tie the game, then win the game in the final minute, though, that section is just going haywire from kickoff to the end of the match. And even after the game, I mean, I was leaving chatting to Chris Cunane, one of my part-time bosses with the NBA for the one game I did in the NBA G League. And I was walking out of the stadium. They're still outside, chanting and drumming and dancing. It's like these guys just don't stop. So, I mean, and I think, James, that adds a layer. You said that a little bit earlier, but it does add a different dynamic to a game. And especially when your team is, they concede the tying goal and they end up losing at the death, basically. And they don't stop. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible where, again, they probably would stop and oh, no, tie game. Oh, no, we've fallen behind. No, I mean, they're still full throat going the whole way. So if you haven't been to a game at the Bank of California Stadium, put it on the list if you're a soccer aficionado out there. But my final thoughts, though, folks, again, thank you all so much for tuning in here tonight. We are back once more again, folks, tomorrow again as the Marvel Dudes podcast will take the week off. And we will, in fact, go from there with the night shift again to recap NBA postseason, talk baseball, but also talk the Indy 500 after it runs tomorrow as well. We'll see if Scott Dixon can pull off the victory from Indianapolis, and also keep you posted about other big news. And of course, we will be back with you folks at 10 o'clock p.m. in the evening. And Isaiah, James, wants to shout out the right field hooligans, who also do, in fact, bring the soccer atmosphere to the Coliseum, which I think, though, they could use because of the lack of attendance at that ballpark.
They are great, man. Trust me. I've been able to have a chance to work the bleachers. They always bring the noise. They bring the drums, the horns, and they stay until they stay from the beginning of the game to the very end of the game, no matter if the A's are winning 10-0, if they're losing 6-0, no matter what happens, they stay until the very end, and they are true diehard fans.
I do wonder if they are, in fact, ticket holders for the Earthquakes, Isaiah, because I think that regular baseball fans won't be doing that. Something tells me that there has to be someone in there who's a member or a drummer for one of the Earthquake supporter groups in San Jose who just brought it to a game and they're like, okay, let's do it.
Maybe the Sharks, because I know the Sharks before the hockey game, they always have like a drumming crew like outside I don't even know what the arena is called.
SAP Center at San Jose.
The SAP Center. Yeah, I've lived in the Bay Area for 10 years. I don't even know what that arena is called, but they have like a drumming crew outside the arena before the hockey game. So I think a couple of them have to be part of that drumming crew. They absolutely have to be.
They're either Sharks season ticket holders or they are ticket holders at PayPal Park for the Quakes, who I also despise because I hate Northern California sports teams. But that's besides the point, though, folks. But again, once more, everybody, back tomorrow with you on the Night Shift. Again, Marvel Dudes podcast is off of the week. Isaiah and Callan back with you tomorrow, 10 o'clock Pacific time, hopefully, as long as we don't have any more computer malfunctions here, as I had for about half an hour before the show even started. It was pretty bad today because this thing's been off. It's been hot. I'm sunburnt today from going to that game and sitting in the sun. But again, folks, for Isaiah Leung and for yours truly, Cal McClurg, we're saying goodnight here from the MI6 Sports. Rick back with you folks again tomorrow on Sunday to recap again. Plenty of basketball, baseball, IndyCar racing, hockey, you name it. We'll have it all for you folks here on the Night Shift at 10 o'clock tomorrow night back here inside of the MI6 Sports Network. But again, folks, till next time, good night and bye-bye.